What makes a Jesuit priest different from all other kinds of priests is, well, we have a religious order that has a history founded by St. Ignatius of Loyola. The fact that we're a missionary order, and there's religious orders out there that are not. There are priests that are monks, there are priests out there that are teaching orders, but we're a missionary order with the intention of being able to preach the gospel wherever we get sent. So that makes us different. The fact that we take vows. We take vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, which the diocesan priests, like the priests at Epiphany or St. Timothy's or St. Brendan's or St. Kevin's, those priests do not take vows. They make promises, but they don't take vows like Jesuits take vows because we belong to a religious order. And the other thing that makes us even more particular is the fact that we're the only religious order in the whole Catholic Church that actually takes 4 vows instead of just 3. So it's poverty, chastity, and obedience. And we take a 4th vow, which is a vow of special obedience to the Pope, to the Holy Father, pertaining to missions. So the idea for Ignatius was you take that extra vow because whenever missionary territory is open around the world, no matter where it is, that the Pope goes to the Jesuits first to send them there. So that what makes us different. We live in community instead of living, individually by ourselves. And we kind of have a tendency of concentrating in schools, some parish work, and the spiritual exercises, which is probably the greatest gift that Ignatius has left the world, and that's very particular to us as Jesuits. Probably the one question that I get asked the most by young men, and that's, how do you know if God's calling you to the priesthood? And it's not an easy answer because it all depends on the individual. Everybody has their own vocation story, how they came about to an understanding that God was calling them to the priesthood. But to a very large extent, I think it has a lot to do also with the same way that you feel inclined to become a doctor or to become a lawyer or something like that. There's a draw, there's an inclination to wanting to do something similar to this. If you're an individual who's been raised Catholic, comes from a good family, and feel like this inclination of being able to do some work that's going to really change significantly the lives of others. If you like dealing with people, and you feel this attraction to the church and a love to working in the church, all these things can be part of like an experience that's drawing you closer and closer to the priesthood. It's not this magical voice that you hear from, out of space that tells you that you have to become a priest, but you have to work towards figuring this out like you would many other careers. The one thing I do always emphasize that God always calls very normal, very healthy young men to the priesthood. I always say that the guys who make the best priests are the ones who would also make very good husbands and fathers. Because at the end of the day, God wants people to offer their lives who have a lot of options. Yet in the midst of all these options, you choose to dedicate your life to serving as a priest. The process for becoming a Jesuit priest is, it depends a lot on the individual, but there is kind of a standard procedure that we go through. After we spend some time discerning whether we have a vocation or not, we apply to enter the Jesuits. And if we get accepted, we start a stage of formation which is called the novitiate, which are the first 2 years in which you study various aspects of the Society of Jesus, the history, spirituality, various experiences around the world. You go to third world countries, you go to Europe, and this happens for 2 years. And during that period of time, you're called a novice. And after those first 2 years, basically it's like getting your feet wet. There's an understanding on your part and the part of the guy in charge of the novices, which is called the novice master, that it's time for you to take vows. And so we take vows. We take vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. And after you leave the novitiate and you take your vows, now you're basically a Jesuit. You're not a priest yet, but you're a Jesuit. Then comes the stage of philosophy, where you have to study philosophy for a few years. Then you go to do regency, which is a period of time where you teach at a high school or maybe work in a parish. And you do that for 2 or 3 years, kind of like get some apostolic ministry or some work done. Then after you do that, then you get sent to study theology. And that's normally 3 to 4 years. There's various places around the world. I did mine in Brazil. Father Chris did his in Italy and Rome. And so there's different places where we can go. And then after you do theology, comes the moment where you get ordained. And you get ordained first a deacon. You spend 6 months as a deacon. And then you get ordained a priest after that. So in total, it's anywhere between 11 and 12 years of formation before you become a priest. So being a priest is the most incredible experience of my life. I've been a priest now for 16 years, and I've been a Jesuit for 25 years, and it seems to me like it was yesterday that I started. I've experienced things that I never would have experienced if it wasn't for the fact that I was studying to be a priest. I've been places that I never would have gone if it wasn't for the fact that I was studying to be a priest. And the fact that I look back on my life and I realize that there's so many people whose lives I've been a part of, whose lives have changed significantly because of the relationship that's established between us because I'm a priest. It's very humbling, but at the same time very powerful. And the thing that makes me the happiest as a priest is realizing that I just can't imagine myself doing anything else other than being a priest. So I'm very grateful to God for that vocation.